Last Action Hero was released in 1993, directed by John McTiernan and stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. This film is a bit of a strange beast in terms of what it is and in terms of the circumstances and the time in which it came out. So it was released in the early 90s. It's very, very strange for an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. It's very strange for an action film, both in its tone and in its concept. I can't really think. I think this was the first film of its kind, really, and that is a genre film that is self-aware. So it's an action film on the surface with fantasy elements to get the plot going, but ultimately it is a satire of action films. It's aware that it is a film and makes fun of a lot of the sort of cliches and tropes that you would normally expect with sort of 80s and 90s action films. A precursor, if you will, to films like Scream that were self-aware and that parodied the horror genre, and similar films that did the same with science fiction and romantic comedies and what have you. In my view, this is satire done very well. I quite like this film. I really do. I have generally quite positive feelings about it. It's not a perfect film, but it's a film that I watch every now and then. And I think the reason I wanted to talk about it is just because people's opinions on this film seem very conflicted, and I was really fascinated. I've always been quite fascinated, really, by the fact that when this film came out, it was a box office bomb. Arnold Schwarzenegger considers it his first failure, really, in the first film that sort of heralded the decline of his career, which is a bit unfair, but I'll get into that later on. But the critics at the time really savaged this film, but strangely, right? And I was surprised to hear this because I remember watching this when I was young. I thought it was great. I read the reviews, thought I don't understand why it's looked on so poorly. But a lot of the contemporary reviews for this film, the reviews that came out in '93, they make for quite strange reading because a lot of the reviewers, to my mind, don't really seem to have engaged with the film. None of them really seem to understand that it's intentional satire. People are criticizing the fact that Arnold has one-liners and that there's sort of unrealistic action and things like that, and it's like, well, yeah, that's the point of the film. I think it's only been in the past decade or so that the film it's started to become reappraised, and it's still not a perfect film. Okay, I'll get into some of the problems with it in a minute, but I think it's all right. I think it's all right for what it is. I think it's quite entertaining. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger actually gives probably one of the better performances of his career. The character that he plays in the film is a fictional character within a fictional world. So it's like two layers of fiction, and I think that that's quite a task to undertake. And I think he does a good job. He plays the characters quite sympathetic. You genuinely feel sorry for him. And he is funny in the film. Some of the one-liners I think do work. For a film made in that time, the action special effects are all fine. The child actor in the film is fine. You get children actors sometimes that just make you want to cringe. But this film, the actor was fine. Charles Dance plays a villain. One of these actors that just brightens up any film that he's in or any TV show that he's in. He's just truly excellent. The role was originally envisaged for Alan Rickman, but according to sort of trivia about the film, Alan Rickman was too expensive, so they went with Charles Dance, who was like considered the sort of non-union Mexican equivalent of Alan Rickman at the time. It was before he was really a star, but the acting's fine. The story of the film, I think, really deserves a plaudit for being so original. The child finds this sort of magic ticket that allows him to walk in and out of any film that he pleases. He's a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, so he goes into his latest film and just partakes in it, really. And the film has a sort of basic plot about mobsters and things like that, but it's played for comedy. It's played for satire. And it's fine. But I think, for me, the problems in this film, the problems with this film come to the fore most strongly in the sort of third act of the film, because the concept of the film overall, I mean, there's no denying it. I mean, I like the film and I'm saying this. The concept is extraordinarily silly. It really is silly if you think about it. But for the first two acts of the film, it does an okay job selling you on this world. You know, you buy it. But once you go back to the real world at the end of the film, where he goes with the Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in the made up film, and Charles Dance is there as well. That's when things start to get a bit tenuous for me because they go back to the supposed real world, and yeah, they do a nice job, with lighting and stuff, contrasting the two. But when they go back to the real world, it's like movie logic still applies. Charles Dance like shoots a guy, and people just walk past like, wow, that's no big deal. I mean, I think in the 1990s in New York, I don't care how bad a neighborhood is. I think if someone gets shot in the street, people aren't just going to walk past like it's nothing. Um, and then, they make fun of the fact that, it's not like the films anymore. Arnold isn't just going to stumble upon the villain doing a bad thing. They're in a city of 8 million people. How are they ever going to find him? Is he even still in New York? But then they find him. So things like that, I think, are what produce a disconnect with the film, particularly in the third act. Um, I think also the tone of the film. It's one of these films. I think the making of the film is almost as interesting as the film itself. I think there was a problem with the director. So I mean, John McTiernan is an excellent director. He made some of the best action films of all time: Predator, Die Hard. But I don't think he was really right for this. I think this really should, because this is more like almost a fantasy film. It's more of a fantasy film really than an action film. It probably would have been handled better in the hands of a different director. Maybe someone like, um, oh, I don't know, Robert Zemeckis, or maybe Peter Weir, or someone like that. Someone that could understand these worlds a bit better. Even I guess James Cameron might have done a good job with this. But as it stands, you watch the film, and if you really pay attention to it, there is something off about a lot of about the way the scenes are framed, about some of the editing, some of the comedic timing is a bit awkward as well. And it's like, yeah, John McTiernan is not really skilled at making that kind of film. Um, Similarly, Shane Black, who's like one of the biggest sort of screenwriters for action films in the 80s and 90s, was one of the screenwriters for this film, which again seems quite misguided. It's a film that's essentially parodying all of the tropes and things that he's helped to create. He wrote the script for the Lethal Weapon films. He wrote the script for Predator, actually. So it seems odd to me that these people would be involved in what is essentially a send up of the genre, because it's more, yeah. I mean, it is played for laughs. You can tell. Apparently, reading up in the film, when they started shooting, there was a lot of uncertainty with the cast and the crew about exactly what kind of film they were making. They weren't sure if it was going to be a more sort of whimsical fantasy film geared towards children, about movie magic and things like that, or if it was going to be like a stylized, R-rated, quite violent, sort of set piece driven movie, which is, and I think they ended up with a strange sort of hybrid of the two, and that I can tell why that wouldn't work for everyone. I personally don't mind it, but I can tell why that wouldn't work for everyone. The fact that these two tones do seem to clash each other during the film, like it's trying at some points to be quite gritty and serious, but you get this just very, very, very silly plot that's going on as well. Um, so yeah, overall, I actually quite like the film. I find it very entertaining. It's funny. It's engaging. Arnold Schwarzenegger's a joy to see. Charles Dance is a really good actor in the film. Um, and I really do like the concept. I remember when I was a child, this is a film that kind of captured my imagination. I mean, if anything, it's a shame that the ending's quite limited. I mean, I'm imagining this in the hands, if this was made today, and if like, I don't know, Joss Whedon or someone made it, I can just imagine the end of. I always kind of wish that the end of the film was like I don't know, a cabin in the woods scenario, where they just go in and out of every film, and there's like, I don't know, there's King Kong, there's Freddy Krueger, there's Hannibal Lecter, there's, I don't know, The Exorcist or something, just going in and out of films. I think that would have been great. Anytime I watch the film, I do kind of wish there was a scene like that, but there's not. I mean, that would be difficult to do with rights issues and copyright and whatever. I get it, but that's always what I imagined in my head. But it's a good. I don't know. I find it very hard to dislike this film, and I guess I've always felt that it was really unfairly treated by reviewers at the time. It should have been given more of a chance, and I do like that it has been more appreciated as time goes on. I mean, it was a box office bomb. Arnold Schwarzenegger took it really bad, but I don't think he should have. I mean, it was poor timing. It was released, I think, 2 weeks after Jurassic Park in 1993, and they had assumed that by then Jurassic Park would have sort of faded and people would want to see a new film. But actually, what they were finding at cinemas in America was that people were going to the cinema and choosing to see Jurassic Park a second time over seeing Last Action Hero, which is unfortunate. I mean, Jurassic Park is obviously a much superior film. I don't blame people for going to see that before Last Action Hero, but if it had been released in a different time, I think it would have done better. I think its reputation would have been a bit stronger if it had been given more time to to finish editing and to finish making the film. I think it would have been better. And I'd be interested to see maybe there'll be a director's cut one day. I mean, John McTiernan, I think he was in he had some sort of legal difficulties. I can't remember what exactly they are, and I don't want to say because I'm not sure in case I get sued. So I'll just say I think he had some legal difficulties. That means he probably isn't doing a director's cut anytime soon. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to see a different version of the film. As for a rating, I sort of rambled a bit towards the end there, but as for a rating, I'm going to give it a generous for what the film is, 58 out of 100. It's a film that I like. It's a film that I've watched every now and then. It's a film I've always kind of known, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's different to your standard 80s 90s sort of Schwarzenegger vehicle, and yeah, it's a film that, whilst flawed, I do generally have quite a lot of time for.